What does it mean to be a woman alive today, facing the excitement of change and the challenge of self-discovery?
Late 20th century feminism created a revolutionary era for women in America. The world was rapidly changing. The 1950s American society reinforced the idea that women had certain limits regarding what they could and could not do. Second wave feminism set the stage for a whole new history. Women craved to become more than just housewives and break the cycle of traditionally misogynistic expectations. Second wave feminism marked a renewed responsibility in female political agency and activism to work towards equal rights in America. According to Gale.com, the second wave feminist movement took place in the 1960s and 1970s and focused on issues of equality and discrimination, which followed former issues. First wave feminism took place primarily in the late 19th and early 20th century. Federal laws did not guarantee rights for women in America. Due to this, women created the women's suffrage movement. The central goal of the movement was for women to gain the right to vote in America. Women fought for over 40 years for suffrage, and in 1920, women finally obtained their right with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Additionally, a new amendment was proposed in 1923 at the National Women's Party Convention, known as the ERA, short for Equal Rights Amendment, stating, "Men and women shall have equal rights throughout the United States in every place subject to its jurisdiction." The amendment did not get enough popularity from the public, so it was scrapped. After the achievement of suffrage, outsiders believed women were fulfilled with their lives. However, in the upcoming years, women were controlled by the traditional roles of housewives and mothers. College was not deemed important, and most women lacked the access and resources to seek out higher education. Not many women could get hired for jobs because their options were very limited. The highest paying jobs they could get were those as nurses, secretaries, or teachers. Media was also a problem at this time. Housewife culture was advertised heavily on television and in magazines. Furthermore, a woman's physical appearance was supposed to be the top priority, and marriage was the number one achievement.
Be a good little Maxwell housewife and don't experiment with my son or my coffee. And I love you a lot, Max.
After World War II, when men returned from war and women were expected to go back to being wives and mothers, in 1963, a book caused a shift in how the public perceived women in American society. Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique to speak one thing: women were not satisfied with their traditional roles as housewives. Friedan argued, the problem lay buried, unspoken for many years in the minds of American women. Each suburban wife struggled with it alone, as she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, and laid beside her husband at night. She was afraid to ask even of herself the silent question, is this all? Friedan used personal stories from housewives across the country to prove her point. She also incorporated statistics to show that women have desires other than staying at home, while also proving that marriage ages for women were becoming younger. The book claims that being truly feminine means that women can manage having careers and becoming mothers. It also offers advice to create life plans before following societal expectations. After the spark of the feminine mystique, the feeling of security in the book gave birth to a second wave feminist movement. 3 years after the book was published, NOW, short for the National Organization for Women, formed to address issues of gender discrimination in the 1960s. The organization advocated for all things equal rights. In 1967, NOW adopted a resolution to support the dormant ERA to get it ratified by the Congress. In 1968, a group of women from New York protested against the American pageant industry. The Miss America pageant is an annual pageant that is primarily based on the beauty of women across America. The reason for the protest was to challenge judging women based solely on their bodies. According to the Miss America press release, the pageant only created one winner to be used in 49 useless losers. Feminists gathered around Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey. They performed controversial acts like throwing feminine objects such as bras, girdles, and high heels around and shouting, "No more Miss America." The protesters even crowned a sheep to show how objectified women are. This protest was a pivotal moment in historical feminism because it brought serious issues such as the objectification and sexualization of women due to unrealistic beauty standards to the attention of many across America. In the same way, the 70s were full of political protests for women. In 1970, the Women's Strike for Equality was held. The NOW organization, and specifically Betty Friedan, created the ordeal to bring attention to ongoing problems. The strike was a symbolic act to bring women together to fight for an equal objective. Friedan hoped that women would take a break from their traditional roles for one day and rally together as a protest for three main issues: equal job opportunities and pay, better access to reproductive care, and better childcare opportunities. The strike took place in multiple major cities such as New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C. The women faced people on the sidewalks mocking them for what they were doing. Every woman who was participating was dedicated to the movement. Friedan ended the protest with a long speech claiming, "I thank God I was born a woman."
Now, the main demand, of course, is equal rights to have a job, to have respect, to not be viewed as a piece of meat.
Female political agency was on the rise during this decade. After all of the political rallying and protesting for equal rights, feminists remained dedicated to the ratification of the ERA. However, the battle was not over. The National Political Caucus, formed in 1971 after the ERA failed to be passed in 1970. Major feminists like Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, and Shirley Chisholm created the organization to identify, recruit, and endorse women who were hoping to get involved in political and public roles. Gloria Steinem was also the co-founder of Miss Magazine, which was the first magazine owned, run, and written by all women. The magazine was a leading voice throughout this time period. It ran stories about women's culture and important political information. The magazine was controversial because it did not shy away from being bold and opinionated. Most magazines for women at the time mainly focused on things like beauty tips to please a man. Miss Magazine covered tough issues that many people did not want to address, such as criminalized abortions. The magazine also advocated for the ERA by educating readers and supporting the ratification of it. After all of the hard work to bring awareness of the ERA to the public's attention, it was finally passed on March 22, 1972 by a 2/3 majority vote and given an 8-year deadline to be approved by 38 states. Things were looking up when 35 out of 38 states approved the amendment, but things slowed down. The 1977 National Women's Conference was held to bring women together to discuss political issues facing them. The most important thing was that the conference was supposed to be diverse by bringing women of all different backgrounds and lifestyles together. The excitement surrounding the conference brought in hundreds of feminists, but also anti-feminists, to Houston, Texas. One opponent, Phyllis Schlafly, opposed to the ERA due to her conservative viewpoints. After the ERA was passed, Schlafly founded the Stop ERA Foundation and a weekly newsletter where she discussed why the ERA should not be passed.
On the husband and the wife. ERA ends up in taking away the right of the wife to be supported by her husband.
The conference lasted with constant debates between the two sides over major issues that had lasted throughout the decade and resulted in a national plan of action that had over 20 recommendations on how to spread gender equality around America. After the debates of 1977, it seemed like a race against time to get the ERA passed, but some states were not letting up. In 1978, Congress passed a joint resolution to extend the deadline to 1982. This gave feminists the confidence they needed to keep hope in the states to consider new approval to the amendment. This, however, was not the case because the 1980s opened new doors to political dilemmas. The Stop ERA Foundation had gained momentum in the early 80s due to the rise of Republican women. The political climate from the 70s shifted to extremely conservative under the new control of the Reagan administration in 1981. There were multiple political events and media campaigns held by NOW and other feminist organizations to try and spread awareness for the amendment, but by 1982, there was not enough support to get the ERA ratified and turned into an official amendment. Feminism in the 1980s faced backlash due to the new policies arising. Attention was taken away from the second-wave feminist movement because new crises were evolving for the decade. However, the 90s brought upon new issues involving women in the workforce. In 1991, Anita Hill, a law professor, accused Clarence Thomas, a conservative Supreme Court nominee who she had previously worked under, of sexual harassment in the workplace. This was a critical moment in history because it was a rare occurrence. The idea that a woman would accuse a man of something so horrendous was foreign. Hill's testimony led to new conversations of sexual harassment and the possibility of it. Anita claimed herself, in the decades following the hearings, that changed. It changed because people started telling their stories. We started filing complaints. We had lawsuits that were filed, and the public became much more aware. The argument of whether or not second-wave feminism was impactful is obvious. The multiple ways of feminism throughout history have never fully faded, and all have worked towards an equal goal: no gender discrimination. Political agencies such as NOW still exist today to fight for that goal. The evolution of feminism since the late 1960s has expanded so much that most women do have careers of their own today. As of January 2025, Joe Biden recently declared that he considers the ERA to be a fully ratified amendment. The fight for the ERA will always be relevant even today.